In Summonaria, players play as wizards and sorcerers summoning units to take control of the newly discovered towers of Commundus on Thranok. In the box you'll find a game board with points of interest and player domains, a black and white rulebook including the 5 summoners' background stories, a bestiary explaining each unit and their special abilities, 100 resource cards used to summon units, 200 unit tokens, 50 for each summoner, 5 crumbled tower tokens, 15 double-sided wound poison tokens, and 3 dice, a die 6, a die 8, and a die 10. Depending on how many players you are, when a player controls a certain amount of towers for a complete turn, including their own and their domain, they win.
Here's how to set up the game. Place the board game in the middle of the table. Each player chooses one of the 5 summoners to play as, either Prince Ilshin, Karaz the Wise, Vodash the Undying, Painlord Korak, or Chorus Deeproot. Give each player their respective unit tokens. Shuffle the resource card and place it on the table to form the draw pile. Place all wound tokens on the table within reach of all players. Determine randomly which player goes first. He draws 3 resource cards and then clockwise every other player draws 3 as well. You are now ready to fight for dominion over Thranok. The first player begins their turn. There are 4 steps in a player's turn, always following this order. Draw new resource cards, summon a new unit, move and engage units, and lastly, place summoned unit on the board.
Let me explain to you the phases in each turn. In the draw new resource cards phase, the active player must draw 2 cards. A player's hand can never have more than 7 cards, so if a player is holding 6 cards, he must discard 1 to be able to draw 2. However, if his tower in his domain is occupied by an enemy unit, his Mystic Link is disrupted and therefore only draws 1 card. If the main deck is depleted, then just shuffle the discard pile to form a new main deck. This phase is also the best to trade resource cards with other players because it's right before the summon a new unit phase. Then the players move on to the summon new unit phase. Here the active player may spend the appropriate resource cards, by discarding them to the discard pile next to the main deck, to summon a new unit. There are 4 resources: Bloodstones, Dragon's Teeth, Toadstool, and Fairy Dust. But every faction and units only require 3 of these resources. You'll find the requirements to summon a new unit on their token. Also, the order of the resource is very important. The first is called your primary resource, next down the list is the secondary resource, and lastly the tertiary resource. Players may opt to use the primary resource as replacements for their second and tertiary resource, or use the secondary resource as replacement for the tertiary resource. If you have the resource cards to meet a unit's requirement, you can now summon that said unit. Next phase is move and engage units. A unit's move is represented by the number in the circle on top of the unit's token. Units may move up and down, sideways, or diagonally. Units may move up to their movement value. Always remember though that engaging another unit requires at least 1 movement. So for example, a unit with move value 2 cannot move 2 squares and then attack. However, he can move 1 square and then use his remaining move to attack. Here's how attack works. Each unit has an attack rating found on the top right of their token. The attacker declares which unit attacks. It rolls the die or dice denoted by its attack value. For every 1 rolled on each die, a hit is scored. For this review, we will use the Fleet Combatant variant, which means for every 1 or 2 on each die counts as a hit. When a hit is scored, put that many wounds on the defending unit. If a unit has wounds equal to their hit rating, which is the heart-shaped icon, it dies and is returned to that player's pool. Also, if you manage to score a hit, that unit attacks again with his attack value. This keeps going until you've killed the defending unit or didn't score any hits. If the defending unit is still alive, it now gets to counterattack. It uses his attack rating, and again, if any hits are rolled, he rolls again a new attack until his attacker is defeated or he scores no hits on an attack. What is also important to note is the Defender Square. All battles take place in the Defender Square. If a battle takes place in a player's starting domain, defined by the yellow lines on the game board, any units in their summoner's domain receives an extra die 10 whether attacking or defending. Also, attackers who kill a defender must enter the defender's square. Tower square also provide an extra hit to defenders in them. Once it absorbs a hit, it becomes crumpled. Put the crumble token on the tower square, and further hits are taken on the unit. The tower can be repaired by a unit on it if it forgoes all action and there is no occupying enemy units adjacent to it. Note that some units have special abilities written in pink on the right hand side of the unit token. Consult the bestiary for the special rules. And lastly, once all player units have acted, place your summoned unit on the board in your domain's portal. If for any reason the portal is blocked by another unit, the summoned unit does not go to the board. It returns to the player's pool, and all resources spent on it still go to the discard pile.
When players control a certain amount of towers for a complete round, depending on how many players you are, that summoner wins. The game has other interesting elements like trading resource cards and transmuting resources for another. When transmuting, you can change 3 resources for any one in the discard pile. Also, trading with players is a lot of fun, because you can say what you're willing to trade and put those cards face down. But once the cards are traded, that's what you get, whether they did good on the agreement or not. Other nice features were the temples a unit can enter. Here the unit becomes blessed by flipping the unit token over, which grants them an extra hit rating. But once they get hit, they're flipped back to their original state. The production quality is okay and the art was alright initially, but then it grew on us and we really liked it. It had a comic book feel to it. And we especially loved the background story of the world and each summoner to really get in the mind frame. But Summonaria is not without its drawbacks. We playtested it many times and in a 2-player game we found the luck of the dice had a lot to do with the winning of the game. And in a 3 to 4 player game, get ready to invest many hours to it. We noticed they didn't put an estimated time for playing Summonaria on the box. Now we know why. We found our units missing a whole lot. The best percentage was on a die 6, which gave us a 33% chance of success. So after a while, the game started to feel drawn out. So basically, our review is this. If you want to play a quick game, you can only do so playing it 2 players. Maybe. If you have lots of hours to commit to a multiplayer board game, then you might like this one. But in either case, get ready to miss on your attacks a whole lot. We give Summonarian 7 miss more often than hit units out of 10.